All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Stimming and Stilettos with Dr. Tasha. And per my usual, I always bring you the best guests because that is what I do. And today is no different. And so I don't, how did we meet? Probably on LinkedIn, because that's where I
Yeah.
find that's probably where I find the best guest. Because that's where all the best people are. That's actually not true, but it's where I actually find the best guests. So today's guest is Scyatta Wallace. Um, did I do your show? Or I don't even know how it happened.
I don't have a show, so
So,
definitely
I
give you
mean,
my
I don't
show.
know how we met. I don't know, but we've been LinkedIn buddies and companions, and we've been communicating on LinkedIn for quite a while, I feel. And it's really good to really communicate on that platform because there's a lot happening there. And so, Seattle Wallace, y'all. So I'm really glad that we could really get this together. I feel like this has been like a year in the making, right?
Yes, there has been. Yeah.
Okay. Well, um, you guys, she's been doing a lot of great things in the financial literacy space as it relates to Black women, women of color, women in STEM. She has a really fascinating story that I can't wait to hear the breadth of because I just know bits and pieces of it because we've kind of talked back and forth about what it is. And so I can't wait to hear it all. And so I'm really glad that we could get this finally on the books. And so really glad that you said yes. When I ask people to come on the show and they say yes, I literally do a fist pump in the air every single time. So thank you for saying yes.
Oh, I'm happy to do this. As I was saying when before we got started, that I'm just really happy and feel very honored to be able to be on the show because this is an opportunity for us to uplift each other, for us to support each other, for us to see each other and be there for each other. So I'm really happy to be here.
Well, here we go. So, so Siata, please tell us your STEM story.
hmm well, first, I love that you call it a STEM story. Um, it's kind of hard to know where to start, but I will say that I've always been someone who loved to ask questions, and I have a 5-year-old daughter, and she's definitely following in my footsteps. I mean, all kids ask a lot of questions, but she really goes over the top. But I see it through her eyes in the sense of I see that that's an analytical mind. That's a mind that likes to understand things or know if there's a different way of doing things. And so I would say that that's definitely like where I started with my sort of STEM journey in terms of asking a lot of questions. And I got very fortunate when I actually grew up outside of the United States for when I was much younger.
Mhm.
And my family immigrated here when I was in the sixth grade. And so I started middle school when I went to a science at STEM middle school. It was kind of like a charter school, but it wasn't officially a charter school, but it was a magnet program that was just for STEM. And it was actually the school that I was zoned for. So it wasn't that I knew that I was interested in STEM. I just ended up going there.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, because I really enjoyed it a lot. And I had a seventh grade science teacher that really encouraged me a lot. And she would always say to me, just because you're a woman of color, because she was also a woman of color, don't let that stop you. Don't make yourself feel like you can't do it. I see something in you. I see that you're really good at science. Keep at it. Keep asking the questions. And so that kind of like bolstered my confidence a lot and also made me see myself as a woman in STEM because she called me that, you
Oh,
know?
I love
And
that.
so then I just started pursuing more.
Mhm.
And then that was sort of the beginning in high school, doing a lot of research activities. But I always thought that I was going to go into medicine. to be a pediatrician because I love kids. And so that's what I thought. Um, but again, I was really drawn to the research side, but I didn't really, again, it wasn't something that I thought I would pursue per se. And then when I got to college, I was still pre-med, although it was going downhill pretty fast, to be very frank and honest. It was like, I'm not doing too well, and I'm also not liking it as much as I thought
Yeah.
with some of those pre-med classes. And I got all the way through until physics, and that did me in. It'll
Yeah.
do a lot of people in, except for those that are into physics. So that combined with me just thinking more about what I like to do, thinking more about what I didn't like to do, I recognized that for me, being around people who were actually sick, like physically sick, was not something that I really enjoyed. From doing internships in hospitals and stuff, I was like, oh, I thought I liked this idea, but now it doesn't feel right. Um, and then I was also a psych major, because my parents always told me just pursue the classes you like. And so that's what was happening. I was accumulating all these psychology classes. And then I ended up doing that as my degree. And then I had a requirement for school to do a thesis. So I was trying to look around for my thesis advisor and happened into a developmental psychologist who was at the School of Medicine. And so I was like, okay, this is great. Let me try this out. And that was it. That was it. I was like, oh my goodness,
Oh,
this is perfect for me because she was doing research, but it was with young people. So it was kids again, and it was psychology. And so it
yeah.
was just like a thing that just kind of drew everything together from that experience. And she was amazing, Dr. Sunia Luther. Um, and she did a lot of work on resilience. So that was the other thing that I was really drawn to was that, for those people who don't know, resilience is the idea that even though you may be going through tough times or living in tough environments, you're able to really pull through, you're able to draw upon some type of strength. So it was a strength-based approach to understanding how young people actually were able to grow and thrive. So I was like, oh, I want to do that. I want to focus on that. And so that was the beginning of my epiphany of what I wanted to do as a woman in STEM. And then from
I
there,
could have used you, man, when I was going through my dissertation.
yeah, yeah. So that was it. And then I got my doctorate. That's sort of the very fast forward. Got my doctorate. Of course, it wasn't that fast. Um, at all. And I just remember
Yeah.
also too that I went to Fordham University and there were two women of color, myself and a Latina, and we hung tight, really, really tight, because it was definitely an isolating experience for sure. Even
Yeah.
though I was in New York City, it was still like, what is going on? And then particularly, I think too, because I was learning a lot of things and I was learning a lot of things about people of color, and they were all like downtrodden stories. And even though we do have a lot of issues in our communities, I was like, I want to just know a little bit more about like strengths or something that has to do with a positive experience about being a person of color, or even just something like I immigrated here. Like, I wanted to know about that. Like, what is the immigration experience like? But that stuff wasn't there. So I had to go to sociology and AFAM, and so it was extra work because not only was I getting my degree, I was getting my other degree, which was learning all the other things that I needed to actually do the work that I wanted to do. So
I mean,
that is that.
listen, I feel you. It's like I feel you. It's like I have my undergraduate degrees in mechanical engineering, and so you shouldn't have to choose. And so it's like one of those things where when I wanted to, like I actually love physics. So I'm like, so it's like
The
I
opposite.
and I had to take three of them. So it was like, okay. So I went down the path, but because physics made sense to me in my mind,
Mhm.
but I also had a dad who was a mechanic, and so the laws of physics and math and all of that stuff had came to me very young because I spent so much time in the garage with my dad and all of that stuff. So it Like it just made sense.
Hmm.
So totally understand. Like I have that story of I've heard that story so many times of like, yeah, physics did me, and I'm like, uh-huh. Uh-huh, uh-huh. So I totally get it. But I also understand at a certain point you have to find your own path because A, life is too short, right? To be doing something that doesn't feel like yours,
Hmm.
you know? Like if it was meant for you, then I think you're always going to sort of gravitate there, even if it's like, I'm doing this thing and that's a hobby. And you're like, if that's the thing that you keep gravitating towards it, and it's like, but I do this thing for work, but like I really enjoy this thing. And it's like, well, maybe this should be the work and this other thing should be the hobby. Like maybe they should swap, right?
Hmm.
And some it's like, yeah, but I make a lot of money doing this. But maybe if you put all of your efforts towards this thing that's the hobby, you could make a lot of money doing that too.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can't get people to change their mindset towards that. But it's like there's a reason why this thing keeps showing up, you know. It's like that's another conversation for another day. But like I just in my brain, I've always been of the belief that it's if it was meant for you, it won't miss you.
Uh, yeah. My dad used to tell me something very similar like that. The phrase he would use was, if it's meant for you, it will show its face. That was his quote that he would say all
Mm.
the time. So it's true. It is true. It will show its face. It may not come to be because you somehow keep pushing it away. So that's one thing that it's always important to realize, that you still have to put in the effort to do the pivot or be more curious. Um, that's why I always like to tell people about the fact that I was pre-med before and it didn't go down the way that I wanted it to. I could have, though, like I really could have pushed through physics. It wasn't so bad that I wouldn't have been able to do it. I could have pushed through. I had people in my corner that were, very supportive of knowing that I would get in somewhere to med school. I could have, and I know many people that they have pushed themselves through. And I think your point is so true. Like sometimes the push may not be what you're supposed to be pushing towards. It's a fine line, but I think inside yourself, you know where that line is. Is it that you need to challenge yourself more and put more into it? Or is it that this is something else that you need to be doing and moving towards? And you got to go inside yourself to figure that one out.
Yeah, but you're still a doctor.
Oh, yeah. Yes, exactly. I mean, in the end of the end, I am still a doctor. I ended up doing my postdoc at CDC. I spent all of my academic career as a professor doing health research. So it ended up being, I worked at a medical school as a professor too. So I mean, I was still doing it just in a very different way. And it was the way that I was meant to do for my personality and my skill set. Because I really loved research. So being a clinician was not really going to be something that was going to fulfill me. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and there's many ways to reach the goal.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes we get fixated on what we think, on the path, on how we think it's supposed to go. And that's not necessarily the path we're supposed to take.
Hmm.
And so, and what we need, what I'd like us to realize is that there are many paths to get to the goal.
Hmm.
And I think it takes us some time, as especially as young people, right? I mean, we're a bit older. We're a bit older. Um, and so for my younger listeners, um, I think the takeaway from your story, from my story, because I think they've heard my story many times on this podcast, and I won't revisit. But the takeaway from your story is that you may start down this road, right, this pathway, and it's a windy, twisty road to get to where you want to get to, and it probably won't look like what you thought. Maybe it will. I mean, some people have said, I want to do this, and it's a straight line for them. Okay. But for other people, it's not going to be that. And it's perfectly okay.
Mhm.
It's perfectly okay for it to not look like what you thought it was going to look like. It really is. And so, and the thing is to get okay with it not looking like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's not even just that it's okay. I think it's almost ideal that it doesn't look like what you imagined because then you're letting life lead you and you're leading through life. So it's not, because it's like if you picture, it's like we're in this moment right now. Like I'm not going to completely date myself, but I am a little bit like there were so many things that weren't even invented when I was like young.
Mhm.
So I couldn't project into the future that I was going to be anything AI related. Like what was that? It didn't exist.
Right.
And so sometimes you do have to think about that. We live in a world that's moving forward. There's going to be new inventions. The world is going to look different. People are going to be different. Opportunities are going to be more. And so, yes, you shouldn't be able to have that picture in your mind because it could be something completely different.
Correct.
So I encourage that for young and people who are not as young to just be open to where the world is now and where it's going to be in the future, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing about being in STEM anyway. It's one of the beauties of being or for me anyway, is being in the STEMosphere, whatever we're gonna STEM ecosystem, is that being able to pivot, being able to just sort of look around and seeing kind of sort of what's next in a way. Even being on the fringes of it in a way, it's like hmm, I can, because there's a thought and an idea, and you are moving towards it is such a, I feel like lucky in a way, because we are working on things, just like AI, we were working on that kind of 10 years ago. We didn't
Mhm,
know it was AI,
mhm,
but 10, 15 years ago, we were talking about it. And people
mhm,
were kind of like, this thing is coming. And there were talks about it, and people were kind of sort of trying to prevent it. And it was like, nah, this thing is happening,
mhm,
right? And now look at it.
mhm,
It's blowing up. Ed tech was still being talked about like this, this teachers are still scared of it right now, but at the
mhm,
same time, it's like it's here and we have to deal with it. And now there's, companies and corporations are talking about how to integrate it in a responsible way. And now it's like, Web 3, Web 4, Web 5, all of these things are happening. And it's like, well, what's next and what's coming?
mhm,
These are conversations that aren't going anywhere. Technology is continuing to grow. It's going to continue to be a thing, and so um, we have to be we have to we have to be responsible. B, we have to be forward thinking in all across the sphere in science, and of course in technology, but as engineers and mathematicians are always in the mix some kind of way. So even in our artistry and all of those things, it's like it's not going anywhere. So it's just we're in this. I feel like I'm in the education space right now, and I feel like education is like always two steps behind.
mhm.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I left, which is again part of my STEM story.
Oh, okay. Yes, let's get. We kind of
No,
stopped.
it's all good. We can weave in and out. That's how it flows.
Yeah.
So I was a professor for many years, and then right around COVID, when the
Mm,
beginning of the pandemic and George Floyd, I just had a moment, many moments really, where
yeah.
I just felt like, you know what, now was the time for me to leave, and I was feeling that way. It was like little whispers. I mean, I was tenured. I was very supported at my institution at St. John's University. I was in the psychology department. I was doing research. It was fine. I love my students, but I just felt like little whispers, like something is up with this whole institution of academia, and it's moving in a direction that's not forward thinking. That's
Mm,
what I just kept looking around, hearing my colleagues. I'm like, this is not, it's not, something's not right. I'm not sure why it moves so slow. It moves
right.
very slow, but then I also felt like it was really, and when I say it, I'm talking about like universities and colleges were trying so hard to push back, like to try to keep it back and try to hold on to whatever it was supposed to be, and not allowing it to become more.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, I don't think this is where I want to be in the next iteration of myself. So I'm going to take a pause and see what's happening. I don't know exactly what it is, except that I know that academia is really big on tradition. I think that they're really big on prestige, regardless of where they are in the ladder, in terms of like rankings or community college versus research one, et cetera, et cetera. They all still feel like we're a college, so we have to be prestigious in some type of way, and risk taking and doing things differently. I don't think those things kind of like go together. And money. I mean, just the
Well,
reality
yeah,
of it.
but it's so bizarre because they're an educational
Yeah,
institution,
I know.
which is so bizarre to me when you say that they are not into risk taking,
Mhm.
because that's the place where you should
I
be.
know.
It's like
I know.
they don't go together.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it
With
does not at all. There's
right,
so many reasons for that. There's so many.
it's
Like
like
the
contradictory, right?
it's the way it's built. And so I literally did a lot of thinking about this is because it was a very hard decision, which is another thing. Like also I say, it's not just when you're young, it's when you can be older and wiser that sometimes you have to make some serious decisions about pivoting or moving. And for me, I took a long time to think about it. And I was like, there's something about the way it's built, and they're not really trying to change the way that it's built, that it doesn't allow for the thinking, that you need to have, and the creativity that you need to have in order to build something new or do something different.
They like to think about thinking. Like they like to think about right? They like to think about risk taking. They like to think that they are risk takers. They like to think that they are on the forefront of innovation and creativity. And it's like, no, you guys
Yeah,
are not. You are stuck in the past, and giving credence to history and being, 100-year-old institutions, and yes to that. Like we get it. You've been here 150 years, and yes to history. But you also have to realize that we need to come into the 21st 22nd century, and move along with what is happening in the world right now, which means that we need to be innovative problem solvers, and creative whatever. And like there's a reason why, like, I literally used to work for a community college, and and I laugh about this, but like it's really one of the saddest things. Like we really literally had we they still had, like, we still had whiteboards, not even whiteboards, like we had
chalkboards.
chalkboards. What? They were happy just to get, like, a projector in their classrooms, and I'm going, y'all, this is one of the saddest. And we call ourselves innovators. What the upgrade they would give us was like we were just getting, when COVID hit, was online was an online platform. And can you imagine what the instructors and professors were struggling with that?
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah,
Man, let me tell you,
yeah, yeah.
that was around the time when I left.
Ugh, yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. No, it's something. And it's like It's so many different reasons for that. But from on my standpoint, two things, the research side and the teaching side. On the teaching side, you're no matter where you are, it's really, really hard for you to adjust your teaching because it takes so much to do that. So if you're even saying, I want to be innovative with my teaching, you almost need to have like a semester off to be able to do all that prep. And most places are not giving you that for teaching. So that's another reason, like any of you who are students right now, whether you're working on your doctorates or your med degrees or whatever, masters or undergrad, that's the reason why some of your classes are just terrible. It's not because the professors are necessarily terrible people. They just can't, it's almost impossible for them to actually like reinvent. Um, and I put a lot of emphasis on that. And I felt it in myself, like personally at home. And it was a lot of hours and lack of sleep to do that on a regular basis. And then on the research side, because of the way research is funded, you're grabbing at where the money is, not necessarily being as innovative as you can, um, because the funding is locked in on certain things, basically. Let me just put
Right.
it that way.
Now, can you, for listeners, because I think this is interesting because I don't think people understand how research works. Like, I think people are like, oh, well, if your research funded, your research gets funded, like you can just do what you want. You could have whatever you like, right? I think people are thinking like, well, she's got research dollars. She could just, she's just sort of out here, she wakes up at 10, she goes in there,
Yeah, no.
she does whatever she does, and then she writes a report at the end of the day, like
Yeah.
sort of like, she's just living life. And I'm like, yeah, whatever she wrote, like she's obligated to have to do that. And she has to provide evidence. Like she's just not out here doing whatever she likes. Like there's things that she's obligated to do and report on, and like there's stuff. So
Mhm.
can you tell our listeners and our viewers like what is entailed in getting research dollars? Like what is that? What is that? Can you go
Mhm.
through the process for us?
Yeah, sure. I can do a quickie.
Yes, please, because I
So
know that
I'll
it's
try
a
to break
long.
it down a
Yeah.
little bit so that anyone, no matter what level you're on, will understand a little bit if you've had any kind of science background. So take it back to the days of when you were in maybe high school, where you might do a science fair, and you're putting together an experiment, and they ask you to be able to say, what your background is, which is basically what other people have done before, what your research question is, which is like what you think you want to be doing. Then you got to have methods, which is how you're going to actually do it. Then when you do the experiment, then you got to analyze the data. So depending on what kind of research you're doing, you're putting numbers up or you're putting some type of code or whatever, and then you give the results, right? So that is the actual research that has to be done. So what she was saying in terms of like you have to actually do that is exactly it. Like when you're proposing to do a research project, you have to tell them all of the pieces that you're going to put together. You do give them the background. You do have to tell them what your research question is. You do have to give them a very detailed description of what your methods are going to be. So in my case, I was a psychologist, but a research psychologist. So I used a lot of surveys, um, and different types of assessment instruments to understand more about like how people thought about things, what their health conditions were. And these were things that were already standardized. So almost similar to like if you're taking somebody's blood pressure, that's pretty standardized. We have surveys that are like that. So I would have to say, I'm using this survey, this third survey, that survey, and I'd have to say why. I have to back up why I'm using that survey. I have to back up that it's valid, that it does have all this previous research on it. And then and then I would send in the proposal. So that proposal could go like if you're in college, I said I did a thesis, I had to do a similar thing, propose my thesis, then they would be approved, and then I would do it. Same thing for your master's, same thing for your dissertation. You're doing so any of you who are in any of those areas, it's the same thing on just a bigger level with a bigger budget. It's the same thing. You're just telling people what you're going to do. They're going to give you feedback. They're either going to say, yes, you've got the money, which is very rare, or they're going to say, this is a good idea. You need to revise it.
Right.
And they'll give you notes. And then you go back and you revise it. And that's great news if you got that, even though it can feel like really overwhelming. And then they'll say no. That's the other option, which is very, very common. My research was funded through NIH and CDC. And at the NIH level, it's very, very hard to get NIH funding no matter who you are. But for any investigators of color, especially for Black investigators, the number was less than 1% of all of the NIH funding would go to Black investigators all across the board. So we're
Wow.
talking about 99% is a no.
Wow.
So that's the other thing. Don't be getting discouraged when you get no's because that's sort of the norm. You just have to keep trying and get help on how to do the proposal. So then once you actually get the money, then you have to actually do the research as close to what you said you were going to do it. That's where it can get tricky. If your experiment goes wrong, or if you don't, in my case, I had to recruit a lot of people. If you don't get the right amount of people, you got to really, get it done. And then once you get it done, you have to write it up and then you have to submit it to journals, scientific journals, to show the world what you've done. Now, all of this is really important because that's how we know, we go to Google or wherever and we in the libraries and these all these research studies there because we know what is new in the world because of that. But then also if you want to get more funding, they need to know, okay, this person has actually done the experiment. They've sent it to other scientists to review. The scientists thought it was really good enough to present in a publication or at a conference. So they're more likely for us to give them more money because we know they're good on their word. So when you're at a university, a lot of times that's how you get promoted is if your research is being funded, they're more likely to promote you to keep you on because your research is being funded. And not only is it because your research is being funded, but because they get money from that. It's a lot of details, but I'm just for any of you who are going into research, I want to give you the whole thing
Yeah.
because the background to it is the business of the business. And the business of the business is that they get money. So basically, say for example, one of my research projects, it was $1 million for a couple of years. Every $1 million that I got, my university got 670,000 because their indirect was 67%. The indirect is basically the money, the percentage they get of your money. So yes, they want to promote me because they're getting 670,000 on top of what I got. And they didn't do nothing. I mean, they literally, I don't want to say absolutely nothing, but it's not their research. They're not the ones out there. They're not the hiring. They're providing you with the desk and someone to help you maybe with your budgets. But
Yeah.
my point is that that's another reason why some of the slowness of academia is because people are really trying to survive off of their research money. And it's hard to be able to do something that's totally innovative because it's not a lot of research dollars that are just that for, so risky that it's likely that the experiment won't even it will fail. So
Right.
nobody wants to put money into something like that, except if you're in entrepreneurship. They're more than happy to put it into that. But on the academic side, it's much less likely.
Mm.
So those are the two reasons
Whew.
that it can be a little bit slow moving. And a lot of times for people of color, we come up with very creative ideas. That's one of the things that makes us so unique as especially as Black women, like we have these really unique perspectives and places that we come from. And you said your dad was a mechanic, and so you probably all your whole life were thinking up all these things because you remember seeing it, and you could go to the research world and be like, no, but I think it's this because you have that, and it may sound odd to everyone else, but it might be an amazing idea, and you may not get funded.
Trust. I know I wrote two NSF grants for some programs for girls. Either one were funded. I got some really good feedback as to why they weren't funded.
Mm,
Um, and I was heartbroken, of course, but I look back on the and I went to the went to the NSF conference. The second year it wasn't funded, just to, because I'm like, okay, I'm writing these grants. I don't know why they're not getting funded. Maybe I need to go to the NSF conference to, figure it out. Like what am I doing? Um, but then the next year, the college was like, yeah, we're not writing this grant again. So it was just
Oh.
like, okay, off or not. And then I think the year after that, they wanted to wanted me to partner with the the R1 college across the street, and they
Hmm.
decided to pursue the grant without us. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So just take our idea and just do it without us. So it's just like,
Hmm.
okay, well, so that those things happen. Since
Hmm. It is true.
yeah, but I mean, that is the cutthroat world of which we lived.
Hmm. Yeah, people think because it's STEM, it's, everybody's just so focused on getting their work done and being and knowledge and innovation, but it's its own world. Um, and that's why these spaces are so important so that we can realize it's not us, that we can have a place to talk, that we can hear other people that have gone through it. Um, and that you can know that you can actually be happy and thrive through it too. It doesn't have to all be about, getting dragged through something,
Yeah.
because you can come from that better.
Well, yeah, I've learned quite a lot, but again, I also, the lessons learned are the lessons learned. I do know how to write grants, so
Hmm.
I couldn't come away with it. Of course, at the time, it was like I felt very differently, but like years have passed. But I'm like, a skill is a skill. So I can't take away, like, it's like I can't unknow what I now know.
Hmm. But I
So,
will tell you, don't throw away that idea. We can do a conversation offline
oh, I
because
trust
okay, I
it.
was like, you can still pick that thing back up for sure.
Yeah, it's in here, and I still have all of that paperwork. So
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, so what are you doing now? Let's
Hmm.
fast forward.
Yeah, let's fast forward. So COVID happened. I took my break. And I just kept coming back to, being a woman, being a person of color in STEM, and all the conversations that I had with students and people who were my peers and people who were senior to me, and being on different committees trying to figure out how do we get more people in STEM, but how not only just in, but like how do we move people through so that they can really be promoted. And I was like, I really still want to do that. Like I'm done with the whole being a professor, but I'm still feeling really moved to continue to pursue this. Um, and then I just tried to look and see, what were people doing? Because even though I was doing this sort of like a volunteer basis while I was a professor, I wasn't in the field of the STEM pipeline world. So I was like, let me go look and see what people are doing. And I felt like, and I'm sure you feel the same way because I know you do something very similar, is the spaces that I feel like were not being pursued is the whole thing about what we're talking about just now. Like, how do you manage all of the either microaggressions? How do you know how to ask for help? How do you know to find mentors? How do you figure out what your leadership style is? How do how do you even just know how to work in teams? Things that are necessary in order to be successful in any field, but particularly in STEM, because we don't touch that in classes. Nobody's going to tell you that when you're in the middle of all your technical classes. But when you get into the workforce, what are you going to do? Whether it's academia, whether it's industry or entrepreneurship, these are all things that you need. Um, and you just may not know what to do with it. And it's already hard enough. So I felt like that was what I could contribute because I've definitely experienced a lot myself. But just as a background, being a psychologist too, it was like this is something that I feel like I could contribute to, whether it's just making it clear that that's something that needs to be incorporated into what we do in STEM in the classes and also at work. And then also providing that type of program and consulting to schools and organizations. So right now, I'm focused on early career. So those who are in college or entering the workforce, really focusing on really trying to do more career readiness that are focused for STEM institutions so that they can um, help people be able to like prepare for what we know is the reality of the situation. It doesn't matter how technically gifted you are, there's all these other things that are going to be happening and we don't have as much support because everything is very there's not necessarily like a process for supporting people. It's usually mentored, like someone will pick you and say, "Hey, come, let's have a conversation," or "Come with me to this conference," or and then you start to get mentored into and hear what we're talking about, all this back end stuff that you don't know about. And if nobody picks you, you out there. And
Yeah,
half the time you're thinking I need to work harder. And it's like, no, you can work as hard as you want. It's that's not it.
and that's not it. Yeah, you're right. And that's the thing. It's like, and I had a girl say to me once, she was just like, "How do you pick a mentor?" And it was like, unfortunately, it's almost like you actually don't pick a mentor. You know, it's almost in this world, it's like it's almost like a mentor fair, right? Where like you have a plethora of people who are professional, and you say, okay, I pick her, and it's like, yeah, this is not that. It's not
You
that.
can try that, but it might not necessarily work out for you
I know, because it's
that
but it's
way.
not it's we're not in that, it's like speed dating. It's like you sit down and you be like, oh, this is a perfect match. We're not there. We're not in that space. Unfortunately, it's not set up to be that way.
Mm-mm,
We which is why I have a platform like this where we have stories where hopefully they will listen in. They will hopefully one of the hundreds of women that I've spoken to over the past 10 years or so, they find one who they're like, hey, I want to reach out to this person, and that person will be amenable to taking on a young woman professional and say, yeah, let's have tea, coffee, a Zoom meeting, and be able to have the very real conversations about what it really means to be a woman of color in a STEM space, because there are conversations that only we can have
mm-hmm,
with another woman of color, because there are things happening. There are conversations that only we can have.
mm-hmm.
Like I mean, because they're just things, Like, and
Yeah.
I know this sounds very vague, but like we can have a conversation where like there are things that there are outfits, there are hair conversations, there are nuanced conversations that we need to there are ways in which you need to write an email that would be fine for the young man sitting beside you in your cubicle for him to write, that you cannot write,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are ways in which he can show up in a meeting that would be inappropriate for you to show up in a meeting,
Yeah.
and that is literally still the way of the world, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Whether you are in academia or you are in medical cells in the STEM space, or you are an engineer,
Yep.
that is still where we are, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very unfortunate. And yeah, I definitely want to encourage anybody that's listening, that's watching, to absolutely reach out to the women that are on here. I'm definitely, make myself available as well. Um, because even though you can't really pick a mentor like that, but you can definitely reach out. And if somebody that is taking the time to be on a show like this, you know that they care enough. So that's definitely at least one way to be able to say, okay, I have an opening because they're on this show. Let me reach out to them. But you definitely want to do that. I recommend that I always recommended that to my students, and I recommend that to anyone. If there are people that you see that you're like, something about them makes me feel I should reach out, definitely do that, because you'd be surprised. I've noticed that Black women in particular, but most women, and particularly women of color, don't do that.
Yeah,
They don't do that. Whereas I could give you inbox full of people who are not of color that are just like, Dr. Wallace, can you help me with this? Like, just no matter, they don't know me from Jack from anywhere. It's just almost like a privilege. They feel privileged to be able to say, "Oh, of course I'm going to get help from this person." And it's like that's what you should be doing is reaching out to people. Not everybody's going to say yes, but that is part of the responsibility for leading your own career, leading your own life, is
Yeah.
trying to connect with people for sure.
Well, where if people are looking for you now, because they will be, and let me just preface this by saying information for Dr. Wallace will be in the show notes. I have to preface that by saying I say this at every show, but information will be in the show notes. So
Mhm.
guess what, people? You have to read the what? The show notes.
Yes.
Okay, so it is said. This will also be on YouTube, so all of the information will be there as well. So go there and read what? The show notes. Okay, so 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 you all of her information will be there. It will be
Mhm.
it will be there. And if you don't necessarily want to read the show notes, um, unfortunately, you're gonna have to read the what? The show notes. Okay. Um, but I'll also link to her LinkedIn page and all of the so you can go there. And then you will go this I will link you'll it will be on my LinkedIn page. You can go to my website. Okay, so y'all see the common theme here.
Mhm.
But do you have any upcoming events? So if people are looking for you, and they will be looking for you, so where can people find you?
Well, you can definitely, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I'm also on Instagram at Sassy Sage Says. But
Oh,
LinkedIn
I love
is
that.
Dr. Scyatta Wallace. And that's an old, from back in the day. I used to do a lot of stuff with teen girls. So that was my name, and I kept it because it's,
I
that's
love that.
hard. Thank you. And um, and then also I have a book, a Success in STEM journal that I have that people can pick up on Amazon. And it's really a nice way to be able to think through some of the values and the things that we talked about here in terms
Say
of
it
how
again. Say
to
it again so
support
people
yourself.
can get it.
Success in STEM journal,
Okay.
and it's on Amazon. And so it has different prompts to help you be thinking about how you can really focus on your career or reflect on your career, different aspects of it,
We
things
will
like
link to that too.
self-care
Yeah, we
and
will link.
burnout, but definitely a good place to start in thinking about how to make your career more fulfilling.
Okay, we will link to that as well. So people, if they want to click on it and make a purchase. Okay.
Sounds good.
So you guys have a couple of, go to her LinkedIn, Instagram, and then we will link to her journal also. So you guys got options. Look at it's a banner day for you guys. You got options. All I want to say is you got options. All right. So here's the last question that we ask every single guest on every single show. And it is, if you could travel back through time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give her and why?
Mhm. I would tell her that it's okay to shine and it's okay to take time out. I would give both of those things because I feel like when I was my younger self, there were times when I felt a little bit uncomfortable being smart. I felt a little bit uncomfortable being creative and having those two things go together. I didn't want other people to feel like uncomfortable around me or feel like, oh, she thinks she's better or whatever. And I didn't realize how important it was to just be myself in that way and not dampen it down. Not only for myself, but I just think in general, the world needs more people who are not dampening down because we really need a lot of like light and positivity and powerful stuff, especially coming from Black women. So I would definitely say that, but then also the time to just do nothing, like just rest, just do nothing, don't have to produce. I follow Nap Ministry. with Trisha Hershey a lot, and she talks a lot about rest being about social justice, and so that's another thing that I would encourage myself because I was always striving, like always I got, oh, I want to do this and I want to have this and I want to get this A or I want to get this degree, and it's like, okay, that's all good, but then also you could just take some time.
Wow. I so love what you just said because one, I think kind of goes back to I'm dating this episode and I don't mean to, but like, we're in the midst of this whole political and campaign right now, but the what uh Kamala just said about, being humble or not being humble over
Mhm.
the past couple of days, which I absolutely love, um, and sort of making other people feel comfortable with us, which is kind of, and I loved that. And so there's really, that's not our job, right? It's really not our job. And we've kind of grown up in this era, or again, dating myself at the very least, is like I grew up in an era, I'll speak for myself, where it was placed on me that it was my job to make other people feel comfortable. And I'm now coming to understand that it's really not. It's like not.
Mhm.
And so it's this mind shift, and I'm like, got it,
Mhm.
got it. Like
Mhm.
I'm only responsible for me.
Mhm.
And it's such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it's so good. It's much better for your like your physical body, the stress of having to like manage all of that. And I think like the Gen Z is they got that memo.
Yeah.
A lot of Gen Z got that memo. And I would say if you're being discouraged by other people who don't think that Gen Z should be like that, I think that's one of the greatest strengths of that generation is that you all do recognize that you have to be taking care of yourself, that you're not going to be playing all these little games and code switching back and forth and stuff. Um, I think that that's beautiful, and I encourage it. In terms of doing it in a way that lifts you and other people up, for
Yeah.
sure.
Very powerful. Very, very, very powerful. And I'm touched. Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show today. I'm
Yeah.
honored. And I'm really, again, I know I said this at the beginning of the show, but I'm so grateful that we actually got this together and that you, again, agreed to be on the show. It was so meaningful. And please, uh, anytime, any place, anywhere, if you need me to do anything, sign me up. I'm a
Yay.
yes. I'm a yes. I'm a
I
I'm
feel
I'm a
the same.
yes. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. So this concludes today's episode of Stimming in Stilettos with Dr. Tasha. I know that you are walking away with all sorts of nuggets. So make sure that you are in these show notes. Get the journal, connect with Dr. Wallace. On LinkedIn, on Instagram, I hope that she comes away with this with lots of new followers and that you guys are connecting with her and maybe she can connect you, if not with you can become one of mentor with her, or she can connect you with her network of people. And again, until we can connect again, keep yourselves safe.